you please provide that for us?
Yes, ma'am. Lord, we come today with humble hearts and bowed heads. Lord, we come asking you to put your loving hand of compassion upon us. Lead us and guide us along this tedious journey. Watch over us, Lord, as we make preparation to have our meeting tonight. Give us strength and understanding, patience, and deliver us from any evil thought that we may have. Thank you so very much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. United States flag first. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas,
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
under God.
one state, under God, one and indivisible.
There's been nothing that has been received for the Visitors and Citizens Forum, so we'll move directly into the first item on your agenda, which is a public hearing. We will convene into this public hearing. It is 6:03 p.m. Number one, public hearing for the purpose of reviewing the need to continue City of Montgomery Juvenile Curfew Ordinance 2018-03, codified in Division 2 of Chapter 62 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Montgomery, Texas, in accordance with Section 370.002 of the City Local Government Code, and to determine whether the city shall abolish, continue, or modify the ordinance. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this behalf? With that, we will adjourn this public hearing at 6:04 p.m. We will, 6:04 p.m., convene into regular meeting. The consent agenda. Number 3 on your agenda, matters related to the approval of minutes of the January 26, 2021 regular meeting. Council, what's your pleasure?
Make a motion that we accept these minutes as recorded.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept these minutes as recorded. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires majority vote. It's open for discussion. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and we will accept the minutes as presented. Consideration and possible action. Number 4 on your agenda. Consideration and possible action regarding adoption of the following ordinance. An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Montgomery, Texas, renewing the juvenile curfew ordinance codified in Division 2 of Chapter 62 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Montgomery, Texas, in accordance with Section 370.002 of the Texas Local Government Code, after a public hearing on the need to continue the ordinance, continuing the juvenile curfew ordinance, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent or in conflict with herewith, providing a savings clause, declaring compliance with Texas Open Meetings Act, and providing an effective date after publication.
All right. And the city is required to review and readopt, if it desires, the juvenile curfew ordinance every 3 years. The public hearing was called at the City Council meeting of January 12, 2021. The notice was published in the Conroe Courier as required. The public hearing was conducted at 6 p.m. February 9th, 2021. Prior to this meeting, this ordinance was last reviewed in 2018, and so is due for review and readoption this year, 2021. Police Chief Anthony Solomon has reviewed the ordinance and is satisfied that it should be renewed in its current form. The city administrative staff has also reviewed the ordinance, and we are satisfied that it should be renewed in its current form. Both the city attorney as well as Chief Solomon are at this meeting tonight if you have any questions for them.
Then if there's no questions, I'd move to approve the City of Montgomery's juvenile ordinance as presented.
Second.
It has been been moved and seconded that we accept the city's juvenile curfew ordinance as presented. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion.
As presented, it's presented as a keep it, remove it, or change it. So I would think we need a motion to keep the existing curfew.
As presented. Yeah. Yeah. Why, do you need something different? Do we need to say keep it as is or as presented, Richard?
The way it's written on the agenda is an option to keep it, change it, or get rid of it. So as it's written, it says keep, change, or remove, basically.
Then we'll change the motion to keep the ordinance as presented. How's that? No, wording is important, so,
I'm sure that'll make everyone happy, Kevin.
okay. All right.
There is a motion on the table. It needs a second.
Second.
Council? It has been moved and seconded that we keep the juvenile curfew ordinance as presented. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All those in favor of keeping the city juvenile curfew ordinance, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will continue with the same, keeping the same juvenile curfew ordinance as presented. Item number 5 on your agenda. Consideration and possible action regarding adoption of the following ordinance. An ordinance amending Chapter 6 of the City of Montgomery Code of Ordinances, expanding the area and time for allowing the public to walk with alcoholic beverages in a defined area in downtown Montgomery.
Okay. This item was discussed at the city council meeting of January 12th, 2021. And at that time, we stated with the intent was to bring it back to council for possible action and approval for this meeting, February 9, 2021. The amendments to be considered are 1, the removal of the wording at special events within the 4th whereas clause on page 1. Number 2, replacing section 6-57B1 with a written description of the area contained in the proposed boundary map. And 3, replacement of the item labeled existing area map in the current ordinance with the item labeled proposed boundary map. Staff has considered the changes in the area map covered by the current ordinance and made updates to the proposed area map to provide greater clarity and greater uniformity in the designated boundary. We've also discussed the proposed expansion of dates from just special events that apply throughout the year to applying throughout the year with the time still being limited by the same time and the same days of the week that are listed. It's just that it would not need a special event to apply. We've discussed these changes with both the city's attorney and the city's police chief, with neither having objections to the modification. We on the staff administrative level believe this could be a boost to several local businesses in the historic downtown area, and as well as other shops in the area that could benefit from additional customers who are mobile through the downtown area. Since we discussed this item with council, city staff here discussed this item with the City of Navasota Police Chief and Assistant City Administrator, who reported no specific negative public issues related to their similar ordinance. So with that, we recommend approval to City Council. And if you have any questions, we're here as well.
Richard, do you know if the law that Governor Abbott's working on would supersede this one, or this would supersede his in regards to open carry for alcoholic beverages? Because I know that as a state, they're working on one. So would this ordinance control it to just the designated city blocks, or would his rule supersede it where it's open carry wherever you want as long as you're walking? Do you know?
It's always possible that a new state law, could supersede, what we have here in the city. With the legislature just coming into session, they have a process that they would have to go through to set a new state law into motion. If Governor Abbott does anything unilaterally, I'm not sure what his direct authorities are, but I believe that's just limited to emergency situations. And beyond that, with any legal opinion beyond that, I defer to Alan Petroff.
Yeah, but a new state law could certainly supersede, city ordinances.
So even if we set this as a city block station of you can't go outside of this area, if Abbott's law goes through, it wouldn't matter on a set area. They could go wherever, correct?
Well, I haven't seen the language of his proposal, but assuming that it allows a greater area, then that's possible, yes.
To be clear too, Governor Abbott's new law he's proposing is in regards to not walk around the city with alcohol. It's to continue making alcohol a to-go item. It's not necessarily where you can walk around with or anything. He's wanting within the permit law that you can buy alcohol to go. So I guess to go means you can take it wherever you want. But I don't believe that looking at it, I don't believe it addresses where you can have it in public. It just says you can take it to go. So
And if that's the case, if it's just the to-go, it would have to be in a sealed container. Kind of like you could pick up alcoholic beverages from restaurants now, and as long as they have a top on them, you can take them. But you can't walk outside and start drinking them on the sidewalk.
yeah, that's what it looks like actually. Containers must
Like
be.
the Uber of cocktails.
Right.
The alcohol's closed, and when it gets to where it is, that's where you consume.
Yep.
Specs on wheels, something like that.
I like it.
Thanks for the clarification.
Do we have any more questions around this ordinance, or are we feeling okay with it as we discussed from last meeting to now? Has anything else come up?
And just for greater clarity, where I referred to alcoholic beverages before, in the ordinance, it's specific to consumption of beer and wine. We're not talking, mixed drinks here.
And I think it's great that additional area that was included. It makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah, we looked at the map here within the city staff and tried to consider, and I think that's a sign just of how some of the things have changed since the original ordinance was crafted. And if that's something, assuming this may be passed by council, if there's future changes, I think those are things that we would probably bring back to council at appropriate times as well.
So Richard, where does the appropriate container come into play? Because I don't think it would be acceptable for somebody to walk around with a bottle of beer, but maybe a cup of beer or a cup of wine. I know doesn't really enter into the ordinance, but will the city staff come up with some recommendations?
Yeah, that was one thing in our discussion with the city of Navasota that they considered, and they did not include in their ordinance. And they actually, the recommendation there in our discussion was they chose to leave that to the discretion of the police officers who were monitoring the public and might have to enforce the ordinance. And and we discussed that here internally and thought the same, that that the ordinance worded, as we have it, if we try to start defining that by a certain amount, then we're essentially trying to police that through the ordinance and taking that partly out of the hands of the police officers, and thus we're giving them the maximum discretion, while they patrol that area. If council would prefer to review this and to provide specific limits, that's certainly input we can look at and come back to council with.
I have no problem with that.
May I add to this?
Yes.
Having worked hundreds of these festivals, and when you're talking about the actual beer containers such as bottles, that seems to kind of work better for police to recognize, because sometimes you'll have people, have specific cups or things like that. And that's when it comes into alcoholic beverages such as your bourbons and things of that nature. So it actually gives the police officer a better sight when you actually got bottles. Now, I know that could be an issue, but that's why in those areas you set those trash cans out as well for disposal of those bottles.
Okay, good point.
Tom, what do you do today for festivals? I've seen you out in the parking lot. Do you do it in a just a plastic cup, like a clear plastic cup?
We used to, we don't anymore since my license changed.
Yeah, okay.
I can't sell outside the door.
But you didn't, but you sold bottles in the past. I don't recall you putting beer in a, right? So you did bottles and then the short glasses of wine. Is that just easier?
At one time, yes, we did
Okay.
sell bottles, cans, whatever that came in, and then
Okay.
wine was in a plastic 9-ounce cup.
Okay.
Well, if
Or-
there's no further, is there any, I was gonna make a motion, but do we want to discuss it further?
I'm ready, Tom, if you are.
Okay, I'd like to move on amending chapter 6 of the City Code of Ordinance pertaining to alcoholic beverages, specifically removal of the wording at special events within the fourth whereas clause on page 1, replacing section 6-7 B1 with a written description of the area contained in the attached proposed boundary map, and replacement of the existing area map with the proposed boundary map.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we amend the chapter 6 of the City Code of Ordinances with the change of these amendments to be considered. 1, removal of the wording at special events within the fourth whereas clause on page 1. Number 2, replacing section 6-57.B1 with a written description of the area contained in the attached proposed boundary map. 3, replacement of the existing area map with the proposed boundary map. Council is open for discussion.
Very nice.
All those in favor of amending the chapter 6 of the City Code of Ordinances and amendments to be considered. Number 1, removal of the wording at special events within the fourth whereas clause on page 1. Number 2, replacing section 6-57.B1 with a written description of the area contained in the attached proposed boundary map. 3, replacement of the existing area map with the proposed boundary map. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will accept the ordinance with the amendments 1, 2, and 3. Next item of business on your agenda is item number 6, consideration and possible action regarding approval of construction plans for the Town Creek Crossing Section 1.
Okay. The city engineer's memo is included with this agenda item. Chris Rosnowski from Jones Carter Engineering is available here for any questions, and he will provide a quick review of the item. The construction plans were provided through the download link that was in the city council email, and staff has no objection to the engineer's recommendation of approving the plans. And Chris, I'll turn it to you.
Sure thing. So I'll go through a quick overview of just a reminder where this is. So this is at the corner of Buffalo Springs and Lone Star Parkway. This is one of the Philip Lefebvre's and their development. This is the first of 2 phases for it. It includes approximately 100 homes over this area. We've gone through a handful of reviews, including the drainage analysis for the project. They're mostly complete. The plans are ready to go. On the drainage analysis, we have a few minor comments that they're addressing currently, and it doesn't change the outcome necessarily, just documentation of it. So it's, where they referenced a calculation, we want them to provide that backup in the report versus just referencing it somewhere else, just so it stays together and it's clear. We did present these also to P&Z last week. They also recommended approval. One of the questions that came up there, which I think was sent out in the packet, was regarding the amenities that they're providing, because that was part of it with the splash pad, pickleball courts, gazebos, green space. And so there is a preliminary park plan. They've hired a landscape architect that is putting those together. That's not part of this approval, but that is in the works and is still in the plans, just kind of coming behind this. The one condition that we had on our approval was just, so since this does have an impact on the creek and there's existing floodplain that needs to be modified on the maps, that they need to go through the conditional letter of map revision and then subsequent map revision process through FEMA. And so before we officially allow them to do work within the floodplain, that they have submitted that, it's called a CLOMR document to the city for a review and approval. And so that way it started in the process and then it gets kicked over to FEMA. What that actually represents on this project is only the back portion of 3 or 4 lots that are in the floodplain. All the other floodplain issues are really going to be in section 2, which is to come down the line.
Hey, Chris, do those apartments have any effect on that?
They do. So they were included in the analysis for the drainage. And so part of their impact on the stream and this development's impact on the stream are also in the same analysis, which is then being sent to FEMA to get all the floodplain maps revised.
Are they townhomes or are they apartments?
So they're more of apartments than townhomes. So their name has changed a couple times. I think it started out as, Ples Morgan Townhome Project is what it was called. By the time they got down to the approvals, they were the Eagles Nest Apartments. So it is more of an apartment complex than a individual townhome units.
So they didn't have to come back to council for that from a townhome to apartments.
They did not. So this one's in the PDD, so the Plan Development District that Mr. Lefebvre has with the city. And so those kind of zoning, multi-use, commercial, single family is all allowed within the PDD boundaries. So they didn't have to do a rezoning or anything like that to come to the city.
Okay.
Well, I don't know that we knew that when we approved the other apartments. I
No.
know that the councils typically had in the past, and probably today, we are kind of at peak with multifamily housing. So that's it. So how is
And
it all of
also
that property there still subject to that kind of? Is all of
I'm
that
sorry.
property still subject to that PDD?
Correct.
Is all of that property between 149 and Buffalo Springs subject to the PDD, and it can be anything?
For the most part. So really it's bound by, I need to look at the exact exhibit, but Ples Morgan, it includes both sides of that, 1097 to the north, and it really goes all the way down to 105. So it includes kind of everything over the J. Allen Kent property on the opposite corner, and then the Kroger property and that whole area is covered by the PDD boundary. And
So we could literally have more apartments than we do houses in the city limits.
if that is what he put in, yes.
Mm.
And the reason, so on those plans, they didn't come to you because they're not, does not hit the boundary. So that type of development doesn't require a council approval on that plan set for that complex. What it does, when you do see them, is when there's public infrastructure, public streets and things like that, in a subdivision going in, is when the plans will come to you and come to P&Z.
So they could have started that and did that and turned it into a motel, right?
I would need to look at the specific language of the PDD to see if there's what limitations are on there. I don't remember. But I know there is a lot of latitude within that agreement within the PDD boundary.
And are they, is it low income, or is it subsidized, or is it market value? Do you know? I've heard it's all
I
over the
believe it's
board,
market
so-
value. I never had any discussions because typically if it's a subsidized or a tax credit type development, there's documents that they want from the city, and that was never provided or requested, in my opinion. So I don't believe that is the case, but I don't know that.
Okay.
So Chris, you were saying that all of that falls right in behind that Kroger also?
It does. So if you look on what's on your screen, so everything in this light blue color is what's in the PDD zoning. And then so there's a couple kind of overlapping agreements and things. So the PDD boundaries in the blue, the Lefebvre development agreement extends all the way down to, or at least a portion of the property on 105 where Kroger is, and kind of that side of it between Buffalo Springs and Lone Star Parkway. So there's, and depending on which version of the agreement, because I think there's 2 or 3 different years that the agreement was modified, it changes slightly depending on where you are. But That whole area falls within the Lefebvre Development Agreement that has different sets of, he's tied to the 2004 ordinances. So for example, like your tree preservation ordinance and landscape ordinance doesn't apply to these properties because of that 2004 agreement. And that did have a 20, or that does have a 20-year term on it. So
Okay.
2024, that ends. And I think it's 2024, 2026, and 2027 or something like that for the 3 different pieces, that it would then revert back to the ordinances of today.
Okay. All right,
So
thanks.
we're about to see a housing boom back there.
So just as a reminder, what this does is this allows them to go ahead, approve of the plans. They plan to receive bids to do the infrastructure work, I think here later this month. And then hopefully they're moving to construction in March on, obviously they've already done a lot of the clearing and grading work out there. But as far as the utilities and the streets, because they have, I think, if I remember right, and Dave, correct me, I think they have 3 different builders lined up to get started.
Yes, that is right. And I think to meet their timing, I think they were looking at a mid-June. I think that Hillary is on that as well, but I think they were looking at a mid-June lot delivery date.
All right.
Like I've ever heard council be so quiet.
So what do we do after approve the construction?
Stunned.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of the city, especially open up the franchise for Centerpoint, and then for LDC. I know that he's under a 30-year agreement with LDC, and if that 30 years, what you told me today, started at 2004, and then that much, wow.
So when this,
Okay.
you'll see this
All right.
development a handful more of times. So this is the construction plans. They still have to come back for final plat approval. And then you'll have the acceptance of the infrastructure and the start of their warranty period. So they'll be, we'll be talking about this for a while, plus the section 2. So this definitely isn't the last time you're going to hear about this.
But Chris, the action tonight is for council to consider approval of the construction plans, and
That's correct.
then the developer can take this to the next steps, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, well, I move to approve the construction plan for Town Creek Crossing Section 1.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept and approve the construction plans for Town Creek Section 1. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All those in favor of accepting the Town Creek plans for the construction plans for Town Creek Crossing Section 1, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and we will accept the action, the approval for the construction plans of Town Creek Crossing Section 1. Number 7 on your agenda, consideration of possible action on calling a public hearing for March 9th, 2021 at 6 p.m. regarding a special use permit application by Cornerstone Community Church to request an I institutional land use in suites K and L of the Montgomery Trace Shopping Center, a B commercial zoning district.
Okay. The action item tonight is just to call the hearing for March 9th, 2021 for this item. If ultimately approved, what this item will do, it would allow the church to meet in what has been vacant space and unrented space within the Strict Shopping Center over there. And so, staff does recommend calling the hearing for a special use permit. Planning and zoning has heard them and will issue a report to City Council prior to that hearing date. And so we're just asking them tonight that the City Council call the public hearing for March 9, 2021 at 6 p.m. to receive comments.
I make a motion that we accept the consideration of possible action on calling public hearing for March 9th at 6 PM regarding special use application for Cornerstone Community Church.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we consider impossible action on calling a public hearing for March 9th, 2021 at 6 PM regarding a special use permit application by Cornerstone Community Church. This motion is debatable and amendable and requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All those in favor of considering and making impossible action on calling a public hearing for March 9th, 2021 at 6 PM regarding a special use permit application by Cornerstone Community Church, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will accept the consideration of possible action on the public hearing for March 9th, 2021 at 6 PM regarding a special use permit application by Cornerstone Community Church. Number 8 on your agenda, consideration of possible action regarding adoption of the following resolution. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Montgomery, Texas, denying the proposed rates of LLC. Pardon me, I'm going to stop. Richard, we spoke about this and this is not necessary. It can be striked from the agenda, correct?
Yes, ma'am. This has become a moot point. It's already being referred to the Railroad Commission, so there is no action needed one way or the other from the city. So we can just skip this item and move along.
Thank you.
And move to mute the point.
Next item of business on your agenda is number 9. Consideration of possible action regarding adoption of the following resolution. A resolution of the City of Montgomery, Texas, authorizing the signers of City Council for all City of Montgomery banking accounts.
Okay. And this essentially codifies in as a resolution format what we decided at the previous meeting as to who the signers of the city bank accounts are. The resolution names the specific banking accounts and specifically names the signers, which are the mayor, all of the council members, and myself, the city administrator. As a reminder, all of those checks require 2 signatures to be valid. And so, and whenever for those who haven't been a signer on the account yet, when those checks are presented to you for signature, they're presented with the bills attached. And if you have any questions about them when they're presented and you're a signer, you're certainly welcome to ask them and get those questions answered before you sign. And so we're just recommending this as the formal resolution so the bank will prepare the signature cards.
Julie, you're on mute.
Sorry, button issues. I make a motion that we accept this consideration and possible action as it's written.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept this consideration of possible action as written. This motion is debatable and amendable. It requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All of those in favor of accepting this consideration of possible action as written, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will accept this consideration of possible action as written. There is no executive session on the agenda this evening, so we'll move right along to council inquiry. Council? If there's nothing with council
I
inquiry,
have one.
Oh,
I was going to ask Chris, and Richard, did he take a look at that Town Creek here or that riprap they put in there? Because it looked like they could have put a little more in there. I don't know if any of the council members have been down to take a look at it.
It
But
is, and I don't have, I might be able to pull up a picture. So I did talk to TxDOT and they're scheduling to bring in a different equipment and place more. Because they only really, with what they had a short reach. So they put it right there next to the bridge, but they didn't get the banks as it goes underneath. So they're going to come back and do the banks that are exposed from the bridge.
Yeah, because I had some people that called me down and I went out there, met them out there, some citizens, and they were just disappointed in what they did. So I told them I'd just bring it back up.
Yeah, I talked to TxDOT last week and they're scheduling time to come back out with the right equipment to do more.
is that time of month and weeks, days? Do they get?
They're pretty vague. I'll ask again. Last time it's really going to depend if they used up all the material they received, because that's what we were waiting on so long last time. I'll reach back out to him and see what he says, and I'll let y'all know at the next meeting, if not before then.
So if any of the council members get a chance, just ride by and take a look.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all. Thanks.
I'm gonna ask maybe a dumb question, but is it okay to do that original? And then come back and say 2 months, if it takes 2 months or 3 months, and do the additional work? Is there a difference in that, or I don't know if you can do it all at one time? I mean, I'm just asking.
For TxDOT to come back and do
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the risk is now that if we get a heavy rain and it causes erosion where it's not protected, that's the risk. So the sooner the better. Right now, definitely before we get to hurricane and get to the April, May timeframe when we traditionally have those large rain events, it's wet now, but typically it's not, the heavy gully washer. But I'll follow up with TxDOT and I'll get a timeline for you.
You're on record of saying May, right?
So
You're on record of saying May. That's what I heard.
I said April,
Definitely
May, Tax Day, Memorial Day, all those
Okay.
days.
I just want to make it
Not
clear
good for
because
us.
that's usually our heavy rain.
Another one for Richard and Chris. Did you all ever contact TxDOT on that lowering the speed limit?
On 1097?
Yes.
So
yes,
I have I think it was on 1097 over there by the end. I have not, I have a follow-up call with TxDOT next week to talk about the Atkins Creek project, and I'll bring it up at that time. So if you remember a couple meetings ago, we reported that TxDOT put that off till 2026. Out of the blue, they said, "Oh, where are you at on acquiring the easements?" I said, "Well, you told us to stop," and they said that things have changed and now they have funding and they want to do it this year. So we have a follow-up next Wednesday, and I'll add that to the list. I've been talking to the area engineer a lot lately with a handful of things, so I'll put that on there.
Yeah, because a lot of times we have funerals that people park on the road and people are still going 55 or more through there, and that's a hazard in itself.
Councilman, I have some studies that we've done that are on my desk. We had studies done for 105 and 1097 as well. I'd like for you to take a look at those. Studies. You've also seen our speed trailer out there as well, and we've been putting officers out there. But I think you'll be surprised by what those studies are saying, and we're getting those studies from that speed trailer. So I'll have the lieutenant see if he can get those to you tomorrow.
Okay, that'll work.
I have a question, TJ.
Yes.
And Chief, if there is a funeral, can we not have an officer out there to just have a presence and help maybe slow people down?
Yeah, we can always put an officer in the area. If you've got a funeral out there, because I know there's a cemetery there, and I know they probably park on the side of the road.
Yep.
If you'll let us know, that's probably not something where an officer can stay, and that's probably not that long of a time. So we can definitely put an officer in the area during that time.
Sure.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, that or else we could get some cones too and put down through there. That'll get people to slow down.
But if we know, we'll definitely get that. We'll definitely get an officer in that area. But we have done that study on that 1097 area there.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, TxDOT currently, and well, I'll get with the chief as well, because TxDOT currently has a lot of safety money that they're needing to spend. So maybe there's a potential that there's some leftover from all the other projects that they're working on. That includes, they're doing access management, so curbs and raised medians all the way from 2854 to Conroe, that we can get rumble strips or something else in that area to help slow people down. If they can tag it on, we can ask.
Okay, because we finally got them out to take a look at that Buffalo Springs and 105 area for a traffic light. They were looking at that last week as well, so we'll see where we go with that.
Road humps don't work, just saying. Road humps don't work.
Right.
But hey, Chief, shout out, because noticeable improvement on patrolling back here on Old Plantersville. So if you got safety money though, Chris, I need a stop sign in Old Plantersville and Womack Cemetery. And I need the ditches retrenched so the kids stay out of them.
These are TxDOT money, so it's not gonna get us too far over there, but.
I know, it's not a state one. TJ gets all the money today.
I'd love to see
Squeaky wheel.
I'd love to see what the tech stop money includes. If they've got money, I see where we can qualify.
We'll see, with what the timeline they're on, they have to have all of their projects bid by, I think it's July of this year. And so that's where this big 105 improvements is going on. So again, they might be able to tack on some maintenance funds with this, but it's worth asking the question. I have a follow-up call tomorrow with them on the 105 project, so I can see if I can slide that in there as well.
Okay, that's all I have.
Starbucks opened. If anybody's interested.
Are they gonna close the one in Kroger?
I don't know.
No, they
like
typically
to
keep
support
them open
local.
like that.
Say that again?
So they'll typically keep those open. Starbucks has an interesting model where they're one of the few businesses that can have two locations open close together and do more than twice the business of a single store.
Wow.
I don't know if anyone's driven down the one in downtown Houston where they're literally on opposite corners of each other, two freestanding Starbucks on opposite corners, so people don't have to cross, but they can make it work.
Yeah, they get so many people who don't want to get out of their car, but then they don't want to wait in a line that's too long. So they'll put a lot of people through, but yeah, they can deal with two locations open across the street from each other.
Montgomery's gonna have dueling popsicle vendors out here soon enough. We're gonna be standing on street corners, snow cones and ice cream, and so just wait, we're coming.
Well, there's gonna be a lot of coffee. I guess we're a lot of big coffee drinkers here too.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Well, we're looking forward to them doing good business.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else for council inquiry.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. This motion is debatable. It requires majority vote. It is all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries and we will adjourn this meeting. It's exactly 6:44 p.m. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.